compute this double integral where R is the rectangle in xy plane determined by these. So this double integral can be written as an iterated integral cosine x plus y. Now we have two options because this is just a rectangle, so dx dy or dy dx. So y outside, so y equals, if we look at here, y is going from 0 to pi over 2 and x is 0 to pi over 6. Okay, now we integrate this inside this with respect to x, then we need to do with respect to y. Okay, so outside y from 0 to pi over 2, antiderivative of cosine is just sine x plus y, and we are doing with respect to x, so the coefficient of x is nothing, that means is 1. We need to divide by 1, and plus y is like constant when we are integrating with respect to x, so we don't have to divide by 1. Okay, so this is simply just sine x plus y. Now we need to evaluate from 0 to pi over 6. That's x equals, okay, and we have dy. So y from 0 to pi over 2. Now upper limit x equals pi over 6 here, so sine pi over 6 plus y, or y plus pi over 6, upper limit, minus lower limit x equals 0, so sine y, and we have dy. So let's integrate these two terms here, okay, with respect to y. So this will be then, antiderivative of sine is negative cosine, y plus pi over 6 divided by coefficient of y, which is 1, so we don't have to divide anything, and pi over 6 is just constant, minus antiderivative of sine is negative cosine, that makes positive cosine y, and we are evaluating from y equals 0 to pi over 2. In the next step, now we replace y throughout by pi over 2, so negative cosine pi over 2 plus pi over 6, so we'll evaluate this in a moment, plus cosine pi over 2, and cosine pi over 2 is in fact 0, so that's the upper limit, minus lower limit y equals 0, plug in 0, so negative cosine pi over 6 plus cosine 0, which is 1. Okay, now let's evaluate this. Here is sine pi over 2 plus pi over 6. If we multiply by 3 over 3, 3 pi over 6 plus pi over 6, 4 pi over 6. 4 pi over 6 is just 2 pi over 3. And cosine of 2 pi over 3 is negative 1/2. Okay, so negative, and from this negative 1/2 is just positive 1/2, plus 0 doesn't count, minus cosine pi over 6 is, that is root 3 over 2, this negative and minus positive, root 3 over 2 and minus 1. So the final answer is now root 3 over 2, 1/2 minus 1 is negative 1/2, or this is root 3 minus 1 on the top, 2, final.